Sustainable management of natural resources is one of the best ways of ensuring the conservation of these invaluable resources such as water, forestry, minerals, wildlife, among others, for now and the future generations. Factors like human activity and climate change have continuously put pressure on the existing resources and even claimed their depletion across several parts of the world. Rural poverty and environmental degradation have locked most parts of Africa. This is due to weak land and resource governance that allows the resources on which poor people rely to be extracted at the expense of local livelihoods. According to the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP), poverty is one of the greatest threats to the environment. In Zambia, changing this narrative has been top of government's agenda. This has been exhibited through many policy directions given, such as the 7th National Development Plan, which also, among other things, focuses on sustainable management of natural resources. To develop and implement such reforms, the need for improved higher education and research on these issues to provide evidence-based governance systems and increase the number of qualified professionals to both manage and analyze the reforms cannot be overemphasized. The Norwegian government, through the Norwegian Programme for Capacity Development in Higher Education and Research for Development (NORHED), has been working with some African countries' higher learning institutions to promote research-based solutions to solve some of the continent's problems through knowledge dissemination. Zambia is a participant in the NORHED program through its second highest learning institution, the Copperbelt University.
So the NORHED project was developed to improve the management of protected areas with a special focus on the Kafue National Park. And the reason why we looked at the improved management of protected areas is because over time there have been a number of efforts that have been pushed towards the management of protected areas, yet the levels of degradation in these areas are still high. So we're looking at innovative ways of ensuring that these protected areas are managed, and wanted to do this using a more holistic approach that brings on board the participation of various stakeholders as well as various experts, so as to help us achieve this very, very important goal towards sustainable management of natural resources.
Zambia boasts of some of the most sought-after natural resources. This is why, in its diversification agenda, the country looks to the tourism industry as one sector that can contribute effectively to the national cake, with 98 million kwacha revenue collected from various tourism activities in 2020, even amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The question often posed is how much of this revenue will directly improve the lives of the people living in the tourism zones. 7 students who are pursuing their PhDs at the Copperbelt University have benefited from the NORHED project through funding to undertake research in protected areas. Chikondi Tole is a beneficiary. Her doctoral research under the NORHED project investigates the reasons for the varied performance of the tourism sector in Kafue and South Luangwa National Parks.
My area of research was trying to investigate and to find out why Kafue has performed not as well as South Luangwa National Park in terms of tourism development. And this is reflected in the tourist numbers that have been recorded in both national parks. There's been a very big difference, and South Luangwa basically has received over 688,000 tourists from 1959 to date, and Kafue about almost 203,000, so there's quite a difference. And so I'm basically trying to study and understand why there's been that big difference. And I'm looking at the historical context of both national parks. I'm looking at the different circumstances that have influenced the current state of affairs with regards to the differences in attraction to our tourists that visit these 2 national parks.
Conducting such a research comes with many challenges, but Chikondi was determined and braved all obstacles to achieve her goal.
Did a survey amongst tourists who have visited these two national parks, both international and even local tourists, just to find out their experience, to understand what they had gone through, to understand some of the things that they had observed in their visits to the two national parks. Because we know that at the end of the day, although each of them have got a different outlook in terms of their resources and the geographical location, at the end of the day, both national parks have to attract tourists. And so I had to draw insight from the opinions and observations from the tourists. I also did a survey amongst tourism businesses who are operating in the two national parks. As we know, the private sector are very key in driving tourism. And it is important to understand the different circumstances in which these tourism businesses operate in both parks, just to draw insight if there are any challenges or opportunities perhaps that may have helped one national park to draw more tourists in comparison to the other. I also interviewed persons with work experience who have undergone also different types of work in terms of conservation and tourism in the two national parks. And these persons have had work experience from as early as the 1970s up to date. So I had a wealth of information from people in NGOs, people from government, people from conservation, local NGOs, and even government agencies who have observed and who have tried to promote conservation and tourism in both parks.
Grant Simchimba is another NORHED PhD candidate. His research looked at the economic valuation and geographical settlement analysis of protected areas in Zambia. The study was conducted between 2016 and 2017 in the Kafue National Park and the South Luangwa National Park.
The whole idea was to understand the economic value of these protected areas, because most of the time the value is normally not measured in economic terms, because mostly the focus is on what we can touch, like they get fees and that. So that's where we put the value of these protected areas. So we wanted to go in further and actually measure the intangible economic values.
For people living in protected areas, their livelihood depends on these natural resources.
So these people actually, they depend on these national parks for their income, because these game management measures actually they benefit from the income that the national parks actually generate. Yeah, so they share whatever they get, especially from hunting. They will share with the communities. So they depend upon them. And also at the same time, because being around the protected area, so there are these natural resources which are available in the national park. And of course they overflow into this game management area, because it's also a protected game management area. So there are all these benefits that come from natural resources, like food. You know, they can collect mushroom, they can collect these non-wood forest products. A lot of them, they benefit from them.
To realize full value of wildlife, Kaindu community in Mumbwa district of Central Province has formed a trust. The Kaindu Natural Resources Trust is an initiative by the community to own and manage their natural resources.
The trust was formed in 2004. That was on 30th June 2004 when it was formally registered as a trust. And we applied for the community game ranch, which has got about 15,000 hectares of land, specifically to do wildlife conservation.
The community believes the formation of the trust has yielded more benefits.
The big benefit is that the community has owned land now, where we've got the mandate to conserve animals. And the bigger benefit is that in this land When we just established the community game land, there were no animals. In fact, there were very few actually. But at least we've managed to restore them. They are there by way of conservation.
We receive monies every year after hunting. 20% is given to the community and money goes into the VAGs. So there are many more other projects that have been done in the community.
The Kaindu Community Resource Trust feels many other communities in Zambia can yield more positive results if they went the trust route.
With us here in Kaindu, we've proved that having a trustee, it has more impact than just a CRB. There are two different scenarios where you have a direct say as a community and you feel ownership of whatever you own. For example, we own an asset which is quite very interesting, which is 15,000 hectares land. Having this for ourselves, it gives us more of being the real owners, because this land belongs to us.
Dr. Sidney Capembra is also a participant of the NORHED project. His research focus was on co-management of small-scale inland fisheries and livelihoods, a case study of Lake Itezhi in the Central Province of Zambia. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, in many parts of Africa, communities living near perennial streams, swamps, rivers and lakes rely on small-scale fishing as an essential part of their livelihood. This is mainly through the provision of food, income and employment to the people.
How much do they depend on this fish? Of course, I did discover that they depend on that fish so much. They can't do without it. So that was the number one. Number two, I looked at, what sort of governance structure that is in place in that fishery, where the government, comes in to see how to make sure that the fish doesn't exist. It doesn't dwindle or completely get eradicated or overfished. Is there a structure that looks at that? And then do these fishers who depend on the fish have a role to play in making sure that this fish they depend on does not finish?
Dr. Capembra highlights some of the findings of his research.
98% of the fishers, I just targeted the fishers, depend on fish. And you can imagine what that means to their livelihood. So if there's no fish, then their livelihood is negatively affected. And that was much of a problem was when there is what we call the fish ban from December to February, towards the end of February there. Once the fishery is closed, then they did say that we really suffer, because most of them were not even involved in these other sources of income. They just depended on fish. So when that hit, that's why controlling the fish ban is a challenge for the Department of Fisheries, because these people have no other sources of income. They just have to get there. If it's risking their lives, they have to do it just to survive. So basically, livelihood is all dependent on the fish. Once there's no fish, then it's starvation.
The government, through the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock, effects a fish ban every year. This is to allow fish to breed in the natural water bodies. 2021 has seen this fish ban extended from the usual 3 months to 6 months. Now, the community in Itezhi wants to look at other avenues of income generation.
So looking at the community, which is fast growing, we fish only with small fish which are not categorized. Where we thought maybe if there is any help outside the fishing industries, giving us some alternative livelihood or income, maybe we can come up with certain things. If we have we have a help coming somewhere, they are helping us, like the way it is done in the Eastern Province. If some donors, if the government coming in to come and help our people here, teaching them certain skills of entrepreneurship and other things, and even aquaculture, and conservation farms like the way it is done somewhere else.
The restriction of fishing in certain areas. We really understand that there are some portions that are really given unto us, but it's our plea because our community has grown and Iteztezi is most dependent on the fish business. Even those that are working in government offices, this time around everyone is just going into fish business. So as a result, because of the big community and the large numbers trading into fish business, we see that the fishing space is very little, making it very difficult for the fishermen to do their work.
The Department of Fisheries in Iteztezi has been engaging the community to help with compliance levels during the fishing season as well as during the fish ban. Information dissemination on sustainable methods of fishing is always top of the agenda.
Despite the fact that we have these regulations that guide on what's supposed to be done, if we push aside the community, we cannot succeed in managing this. So we cooperate very well. We have established about 3 areas of cooperation. We have what we call the Iteztezi Fishers and Fish Traders Association, which is an association that is composed of all the fishers who are operating on water and of course extending to the fish traders. We cooperate well with them in terms of knowing, registering the fishers as they go, and then also if there's any information that we want to pass on to, we find that's an avenue that we are using as a department to reach out to the fishers there. But we are talking about life here. If somebody who is hungry, they don't reason from them. They will do whatever they can for them to find something to eat. Illegal fishers still find their way into the lake, catch a few pieces of fish here and there. So some, they really understand and they know that this is illegal, but they have to survive.
Dr. Sidney Capembra advocates a sustainable way of fishing.
The fishers are their own association to try and see how best they can survive through this association. The fisheries department also had their own way of making sure that the fish that is not depleted. But these two were not meeting anywhere. Okay, so my role now was to come in and see how best can these two parties come together to make sure that the fish does not finish in the lake, because as regards the nation, we still need fish. Okay, that lake still needs fish. At the same time, these fishers, they need the fish to survive. Okay, so they have just to work together. So I designed what I refer to as a co-management or fisheries co-management development framework. So my study came up with this framework on trying to bridge this gap. There is no collaboration, but how do they come together? Not just these two parties, but who else can assist in making sure that the fishers are catered for in terms of their livelihood. The fish remains there so that the lake continues to have the fish, and then the two parties go together.
The NORHED project seeks to develop cohesive synergies amid scholars, practitioners, communities and policymakers to transmute economic and political institutions so that ecosystem values are translated into sustainable use of natural resources for developmental purposes and as a strategic means of reducing poverty levels. The NORHED coordinator believes such research will help in making better and informed decisions by policymakers.
When you look at a number of countries in the West, they always want to come to Africa for their holidays. They want to be in the national parks where they know they're going to see the big five and they're going to have an experience of their lifetime. So this is very important, because if we promote that, then we're going to actually create employment. The challenge that we have is that sometimes we look at short-term gains. And in terms of short-term gains, one would want to say, no, let's demarcate this area. Instead of it being a protected area, let's give it out for settlements. No, let's help people. This is actually short-term thinking. We need to actually think in the long term. In the long term, we're talking of conservation. Because in the long term, what will happen is that even the people that would want to benefit from the short term, there are still a lot of benefits that they will get from the long term. But if you were to give them benefits in the short term, that will actually short-circuit the whole process.
For the researchers, participating in the NORHED project was a fulfilling experience.
But this project's emphasis on Kafue National Park drew me away from my comfort zone, but I was able to have a very good appreciation of wildlife tourism from the different stakeholders that are part of the project, especially the Southern Africa Wildlife College. So this project has been good in that it has brought practitioners and academicians from the Southern African region that have greatly shaped my knowledge in terms of wildlife tourism, and it has given me an opportunity to research on an area of interest that I've had for a while.
You know, we just see these elephants in front of us and we're like moving in our vehicle there, you know. I was driving because of seeing these animals and, you know, the vehicle had to switch off, don't know what to do. So I was just told to relax and, you know, just be calm. The animals, they will understand and they will move away. So those are just one of those moments which we actually we experience in the park.
But to go there, face the storm, reach the fishers that you have to get data from, and that kind of a thing. It was my first experience, you know, and on the daily basis I had to face, you know, those storms. Whenever you have a storm, you have to face it. Yeah, and the fishers themselves, sometimes you'd find them, you don't find them, but you still have to get data from them. So it was quite a challenging experience, especially when it came to my data collection.
Many people tend to look down on the research capabilities of African learning institutions. However, Christabel Manama, the communications officer at the Copperbelt University, believes Africa has potential to be a force in research.
The Copperbelt University provides a world-class training experience for our learners. There's a notion that in Zambian universities, or let me say African universities, education is based on theories. But when you come to the Copperbelt University, we provide hands-on training to all our learners. That's why we have the Entrepreneurship Center, where all our students will pass through to be imparted entrepreneurial skills. The Copperbelt University has high potential to compete with other universities worldwide. This stems from the fact that we have qualified personnel who are able to undertake any type of research. We provide hands-on quality education to our students who compete favorably in the industry out there.
The Copperbelt University School of Natural Resources has continued to conduct different research that targets the sustainable management of natural resources through its greenhouse project, where different species of trees are being planted. The continent has lagged behind when it comes to research, but this could be a breakthrough to a different Africa with such undertakings as the NORHED project. The project is a product of an agreement between the Copperbelt University CBU and the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation NORHED, where NORHED awarded CBU a grant amounting to approximately $2.9 million to implement the NORHED project in partnership with the Southern African Wildlife College, Stellenbosch University, and the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, NMBU. The partnership emerged out of a serious concern over the capacity of graduate education in Southern Africa to produce researchers and scholar practitioners with the ability to solve interlinked problems of rural poverty reduction, biodiversity conservation, and climate change.